Today we're going to talk about podcasts.
This podcast is kind of your therapy in a way.
As always, well, I'm not going to say as always because I never do this. This is the first time I'm actually recording something after the fact. Not sure. No, definitely not the first time. For anybody that listened to Big Dick Energy, please subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcast, any of your podcast players. Please leave us a review on Apple Podcast. Oh God, I will start reading those now that I have a mic here in this other editing office. I can read your reviews that you write. That would be so cool. And yeah, follow us on LinkedIn. Nikole worked hard to make the LinkedIn page, so she wants to get some followers on there. That would be awesome. Follow me on Twitter too, at Scott Scarano. Don't have a lot of Twitter followers. Hadn't really been on there too long. This is like my second month at it, and this is a marathon. Yikes. I only have like 270 followers, and all my friends have like 5,000. Got to work up to that. And thank you so much for listening. I didn't mean for that to sound sarcastic. I really do appreciate every listener that we have. I want to kiss you all on the feet. Thank you.
Hey, Nikole.
Hey, Scott.
Sons of CPAs Bonus episode where Nix and Scott share a small but useful piece of practical advice as it relates to running their professional accounting firms. Today's episode is brought to you by the letter P. Today we're going to talk about podcasts.
I don't know why, but you're making me laugh today. Yeah, most of these episodes are me laughing in the background.
I know, I like that though.
Try not to do it as much.
It's encouraging, yeah. That's the other reason why I like recording with Michael Lee too, because gosh, he doesn't laugh. And he's got like the belly laughs too.
No, whenever he laughs, I also cannot stop laughing.
Yeah, he's got an infectious laughter. I have also realized that as I complain about something or am peeved about it, it actually is funnier because my rants can go on for a while, and I've been trying to be a happier person. I've been trying to not like even feel the itch to complain about something and get pissed off. But man, when I get pissed off, it gets funny because I can make jokes and make fun of something. And
well, I remember I've seen you pissed off one time. It was when we were in Vegas at that conference, AICPA Engage, and we were supposed to meet for dinner, and you didn't show up in time to meet, and we were walking half mile to dinner, and it was in the rain. And you were pissed that we left without you.
Yeah, that wasn't even funny.
You threw a tantrum.
I did throw a tantrum. That wasn't even funny. Today we're going to talk about podcasts.
This podcast is kind of your therapy in a way.
Maybe it is. Yeah. I'm a talker.
You are a talker.
Definitely
you talk more than literally anyone I've ever met, I want to say.
Is that a good thing?
Yes, because some people are awkward like me, and so I can be around you and you can just talk, and there's never awkward silence.
I think it's, use your powers for good, right? Like, I am definitely not one to be in a room with a bunch of people that don't want to hear what I have to say, right?
Well, I think what I like about you is you are very positive, another P word. You're very positive, positivity. And so people like to be around you.
Yeah, that's a core value of mine, positivity. Because there's a neutrality and positivity and not pessimistic. I am definitely, sometimes I can get pessimistic, getting upset about something or anything like that. I usually try not to because there's always worse. Like a stoic mindset that if I lost my right arm, at least I still have my left,
Yeah.
So pessimism doesn't really work for me.
What's been the hardest part about having the podcast, starting the podcast?
Nothing hard about it. Like the hard part is marrying the reality between where my head is at sometimes too. So I when I first started doing it, I felt like maybe I felt a little overconfident with how things were going. And I thought it was, I thought more people were actually listening to it. And then I looked at the listeners and it's not that many. It's like 5 listeners for the first week. But then we got a spike of 750 last week. So this is a bit of a difference, and I'm sort of marrying that reality. But I think when I mentioned podcasts and I put that on the list to talk about, I think it's as it relates to running a firm. I always thought that if you did something directly to clients to build your business, like Marcus is doing,
yeah,
I think that has long-term dividend impact, and that will generate. Even me doing this podcast already, I have noticed that there are people that are coming to us that have listened to it before they talk to me, and they're business owners. They don't really, well, I guess we're relating this to all business owners. Let you get to know somebody too, right? It offers an entirely different perspective on any kind of relationship. I think the written word and the spoken word are 2 very powerful things.
Well, I feel like it's a way for people that don't know you to get to know you, and without actually ever meeting you, because they can get to know your personality. But to your point about Marcus's being more geared toward business owners versus your podcasts being more geared toward other accountants, why did you decide that you wanted accountants to be your audience versus business owners?
Good question. Yeah. So it's about moving the industry forward and trying to normalize some conversations that I have outside of. I hadn't really heard a podcast that's for the culture like this is. And so I wanted to do something like this that's more for the culture. Some people do things for the community. Some people do things to inform and to learn from. I'm trying to do this for the culture. And I don't know if that's coming across or not, but I didn't want to do some kind of shameless promotional type thing. And the way I looked at it, and maybe I had a negative mindset on that, but I didn't want to just do something to try and bring in new business. I didn't want to do something to make more money. None of this was about making money. I know we have sponsors, and thank you to all of our sponsors, but it definitely isn't about making money or generating a big profit.
It's not about the money until it is, right?
It's not about the money. Well, no, it's about the money until it's not.
Until it's not. I got it backwards.
That's the exact opposite. It's about the money until it's not. And right now, it's like you said, though, in this case, I didn't want it to be about the money at all, because I wanted to have some pure motives and some real purpose. Man, I really just forced the P words out. I noticed this when I'm editing too. It's just P word after P word, and I think I'm doing it intentionally. I'm definitely doing it intentionally. Yeah, on purpose. Exactly. Yeah. So, I don't know. And from your perspective, you probably thought this was just going to be shit, and you were one of the first people that said,
I did.
You listened to it, you're like, oh, this actually was pretty good.
Yeah, no, I was. A lot of people start podcasts and then they quit after 5 episodes. So I'm actually really impressed with you, and I could tell how much you love it, and you're really good at it. So I really enjoyed it, and never in a million years that I think that I would be on a podcast regularly. For whatever reason, when I talk to you, it just feels like we're having a normal conversation. It's not like one of those weird you're being interviewed podcasts. It's more casual. So
that's cool.
I feel more
Thank
comfortable.
you. Yeah. Well, what you got?
More questions for you, Scott. So where do you want to take the podcast? I mean, do you have any big ideas for where you want to take this thing?
I have a lot of ideas. A lot of ideas. Big ideas, though. So I want to help move the conversation forward. I want respect for myself first. I think part of this was respecting myself, and I feel like I at least have that now. Respect from others, that my opinions actually matter and it's not just stupid shit. I feel like I still haven't gotten that from Ackerman. I still don't have his respect after a year of doing this. He jokes, but
you're the type of person that when you first start saying something, it's like it doesn't make sense, but then somehow it comes full circle, and then you're like, oh, I get it. You're a visionary, right? And you have an idea, and the first time you say it, people don't really understand it, but then eventually you get there and you're like, oh yeah, we were talking about the same thing, but it just took me a while to get there.
So, a conversation I had today with Ryan Lazanis. Shout out to Ryan and Future Firm Accelerate. Anybody who hasn't heard, check it out. He said to go back and rethink. He said he went and rethought his purpose. Like, what is he doing all of this for? Then he sold his firm and started this to move the industry forward. And I said, that's exactly why I'm doing this podcast. And it just came out. I didn't even think. I just said that. And that's because I was in a couple of bubbles, the Paget bubble and the Xero bubble. And those two didn't really get married at all. They were just, they are now. Like the Venn diagram is of those bubbles is crisscrossing a bit. But at one point it was like, I met all of you guys through Xero and everybody's on the same page. So I thought the entire industry's on the same page, because in the Paget bubble, it's very, very reflective of our industry as a whole. You have a lot of people who just don't want to change. So that's like a little nod to the change agents of the industry, right? There's a concentrated group of people that use Xero that are very, very tech forward. And that is not indicative of the industry as a whole. And as my head got out of the clouds and out of my own ass, I realized that it's true. Like the entire industry, there's a very small percentage of us, and it's starting to get bigger. The change curve is starting to shift a little bit, but it needs a bit of some nudges. It needs a push. And usually people don't change unless they're forced to, in most cases.
Yeah. So how has the podcast enabled you to move the industry forward?
I'm learning I'm learning the difference between what my thoughts are and if I'm convicted of something and versus what somebody that I've never met or talked to, because we're having a lot of guests on that I've never met now, and people that are in different schools of thought. And if they agree or if they think similarly than I do, then it's validation. It's a lot of validation in insert some of my thoughts or some of the ideas that I've had. And that allows me to move forward on some of them quicker because somebody else is already doing it. So they're offering that scaffolding and a way for me to say, this works or somebody else does it. I want to do it. I'm looking at a new comp policy, a new idea that I heard from Expensify, that how they do their compensation, where it's basically like a peer review.
That was wild.
Right? Yeah, like a peer review. And I want to do that with my team.
Really?
Because I feel like,
I feel like I am not a fan of Expensify's culture, just based on what I know about working with Expensify. I actually quite
I've never worked with them. So
so I won't bash them, but
don't bash them because we want them as a sponsor.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I want to get Dave Barrett on this show.
The product's good. The
Absolutely
product's good.
want him on the
support non-existent, and David Barrett's very opinionated. So some of our clients did not. I like him that very much.
He's a polarizing person, but I love the I love it. I love what he does and the balls on that guy. I like his gusto. Like he's got some.
I guess
gusto.
I tend to lean toward software and companies that support accountants rather than go. When I think into it, their market is small business owners. They don't care about accountants. They're just trying to increase the market share and increase shareholder value versus someone like Xero. The gusto I feel is similar to Xero in that they've invested in a partner channel and they've actually are building tools that help accountants versus some of these other softwares that I don't feel like they're really a partner for us.
So to bring it back into podcasts, I don't know if that relates, but that's partners. That's a good another P word, right? Yeah. Partnerships. I think that's on our list. So the other thing about podcasts too is as a medium, it's not as regulated. It still feels like the Wild West. So, you have like nowadays it's between social media and podcasts and YouTube and everything. You don't necessarily need the radio. Like I don't even listen to the radio anymore. You listen to the radio?
No, not by choice.
Yeah. I mean, so we're still listening to stuff versus watching. Like at least for me, I'm still listening to things. I listen to music and I listen to podcasts. I don't watch that much anymore. I feel like I'm almost wasting half of my self if I'm just watching something Like I want to go out and go on a walk or do something and then and listen. Like, you know, you go out and runs and you work out and you're listening to podcasts. Right?
I know. I never, like, I used to have music playing, and now I listen to podcasts. I feel like an old lady. And even sometimes when, like, Mike's not home because he's a firefighter, so he'll work overnight, and I won't even turn on the TV. I'll just, like, eat dinner listening to a podcast, and I'm just like, God, I'm such a loser.
I don't know. Like, it's not, you're bettering yourself too to some degree because you're learning, right? I'm sure that as you're listening to stuff, sometimes it could be entertainment, but sometimes it's learning. That's what I'm trying to bridge that gap with this. I'm trying to make this entertaining and learning.
Yeah, one thing that we just started doing is every week finding a podcast that I want the team to listen to. I started with Marcus, one of Marcus's podcasts. I think I mentioned this before, but
do you have them listening to one of these?
But we assign it. I'm afraid to have them listen to one of these. Yeah, maybe one that I'm not on. But yeah, like some of them is just about tax stuff. Like we don't do taxes, but questions come up, and so it's just a way to continue our education, but have it be something really easy that the team can just listen to and then have a discussion about on a Monday.
Yeah, you know, I used to always want to give them articles to read, or they would never read them. You know, at least I don't know if they read them or not, but I would never follow up. I would give them stuff to read. It's like, this is great. Oh man, I'm sold on this. I want everybody to read it.
Like,
and then I wouldn't even follow up. Yeah, it's like that shit would happen all the time. Ever since we've been doing EOS, it becomes a lot easier for me to filter out my thoughts because I got, you know, these meetings all on a cadence, and it's not everything. Like, hey, let me reel it back into podcasts. Actually, like I'm talking about meetings and shit. So
focused today, Scott.
I'm trying to be focused today. I have, like I said, I'm learning from this. I want to say thank you to any listeners out there.
So I have a question. So for anyone out there that is interested in starting a podcast, what are the actual steps that you have to do? What are the software you download? What's your process?
Oh, this is good. This is really good. Okay, so I got a mic.
And we're using
Blue Yeti.
We're using Squadcast. I have.
Yeah.
You got me a Yeti microphone, and then I got these Beats headphones.
So heads up for anybody out there looking to get a Yeti. Make sure you got headphones that'll plug into it, because otherwise it's going to echo like hell, and it's going to be very annoying. I have a pop filter on here and something else because I noticed as I was editing that as my voice hit a certain pitch, it got really pitchy or it got choppy and it just sounded terrible, and there's nothing I could do to edit that out. Editing. Definitely edit. If anybody's thinking about doing a podcast, get Descript. Descript. It will save your life. Check that out. It will take the audio, transcribe it. You can edit it. You can use that transcription for other things, which I haven't done yet, but I haven't even done that for the show notes. I probably could just do that for the show notes.
Well, I was going to say, you know, something you could start doing is taking that and then creating written content.
Yeah.
Based on the conversations or having somebody do that for you.
There's so many possibilities with this, and I haven't even scratched the surface. So there's, you know, a lot of my inspiration came from the Cloud Accounting podcast. And Blake taught me a lot of stuff early on that I still live by those when it comes to this. And it's, you know, you got to edit. Like Ackerman said, no, we can just release these without editing them. I did the podcast with Ackerman because he had another podcast. And I thought he really knew what he was doing when it came to podcasts. But man, it is a much bigger world than his. He's like telling me what we should and shouldn't do, and Jesus Christ, like he's living in his own little bubble at his dad's firm.
One of the things I've learned is not to take Ackerman's advice because, well, he's really into food, right? And when we were in Nashville, we went to Catbird Seat. Although people will probably really like this restaurant, but I did not like I don't know if there's 18 or 21 courses, but there was not a single course that I enjoyed.
You did not like that
the
course.
The bathroom was freaking awesome.
The bathroom was great. I loved it. So I got a 10 stars for every single meal there, and only because it was expensive and it was presented very well. If it wasn't presented well, I probably wouldn't have liked it as much as I did. But God, I loved it. It was great.
I liked the experience, but I think my palate is not as refined. I'm not ready for that. I grew up in Modesto, so that's just like a real big spread, real big jump.
Yeah, you know what? My palate is definitely away from shitty food. I can't eat a lot of processed food. I can't eat a lot of like junk, like garbage anymore. Like it just, to me, it doesn't taste good anymore. Like I've started eating a lot healthier and I feel better. So I don't want to go back. That's one change that I've had in the past years is I not just cut mindlessly, but I tried to add the right things too. So a lot more vegetables and other things like nuts and berries and stuff. I was always a picky eater.
So another question: how did you make those pops? So tell me about pops and the logo.
Yeah. So that was
Sons of CPAs.
I had to have that.
Logo.
Yeah. So early on, again, like before I would even we recorded for 6 months before I released an episode, and I had to get everything like as perfect as I could before I would release anything, and I needed to. So that it actually was a client that came up with the idea because they know my obsession with these little pop figures. I've got like, all the Game of Thrones ones. I got a huge wall that's just like basically all pops. And it's so, versatile with what you can do. Like you basically like to create yours and to create all the others. It was like, all you have to do is find one that looks remotely like that person. And there it is. In mine, for example, I have put a lab coat on, which I actually ordered the lab coat, so now I'm going to wear a lab coat during the episodes.
And you just got the Superman
and
necklace
I have the chain, and I got
right?
I got that chain. So they all are symbolic, and I'm holding a wad of cash. So, and the lab coat is to represent questioning and also just my love for Rick and Morty, because Rick wears a lab coat, but questioning and researching and trying to understand something better. Like I just love the scientific method of knowing that maybe you have a hypothesis about something, but it definitely early on and still now, I don't know anything. I know something and I can build upon what I know, but I don't want to go into a topic thinking that I know everything there is to know about it, because that always changes. So the scientific method and the way that a scientist would approach something is by questioning what they think they already know to try and validate it and reinforce that thought. And that's what I've been doing constantly. That's that part. The chain is because I love rap and I love the jewelry part of it. And I don't know where the idea came from, but that Superman S is an S for Sons and also an S for Scott Scarano.
And remind me, do you have any marijuana in the pop?
So the money,
Sure.
no, but that should be something that gets addressed as well. I should be holding a bag of weed instead of money, but oh God, I love money too. Like, so I had to put the money in there. Even though I said I'm not doing this for money, I got to put the money in there, because as much as I try to say I don't care about it, oh man, most all of my conversations start and end with money when it's in my head. It's a Jewish thing. So Ackerman's pop has a pug because he loves his pug dogs. And he is a pug. Like, oh God, if you thought of a pug dog in real life and then that's an Ackerman, like he is a fucking pug dog. He's it's the curmudgeonly, grumpy, it's just like, but it kind of lazy too, like definitely kind of lazy like a pug dog. So, and he's got his headphones on. He's got his headphones on in his golf club, but it looks like an old man. It's like an old Jewish guy at the beach looking for looking for pieces of metal. That's what it looked like. Isn't that, what's that called? Like the metal detector?
You know what I mean? My dad had one of those for a while.
Do they have to wear the headphones to use it too? I feel like
I don't know if he had headphones or not. I tried not to like ever see him doing it. I couldn't.
You just close your eyes and you picture your dad. So that's what it came out like that. I think that's like, to me, that's the inside joke of it. If you look closely, it's a golf club. And then, we got yours that has your footy uniform and a cat, and it's just a blonde girl. So I figured that's close enough. I couldn't get that one perfect, but that came out good. And then Michael Lee's, I found that pop, and it's got the fire in his hand, and that's because Michael Lee's got the fire in his LinkedIn profile. So that worked out because the guy was Asian too. It was perfect. And then Zachary.
You didn't have to edit it. You just straight out of the box. Michael Lee,
yeah.
perfect. Okay.
Dilbert, yeah. And then the other one, Dilbert, is because Zachary reminds me of Dilbert, like in just the way that he dresses and the way that he is, and he looks like him a little bit too. So I was like, oh, that's perfect. Didn't have to change that one. Oh yeah, it is just like Dilbert. So that's the Pops. And then the Sons of CPAs came out by the 3rd episode, I think. It was man, this is turned into the documentary on our podcast. It's pretty cool. So so the 3rd episode, I was looking at the two of them, and it was Zachary and Ackerman, and they both work at their dad's firms, and I was referencing them, and I said, "You guys are the Sons of CPAs" as a joke, and they liked it. And then Zachary said, "You should call your podcast that." And I did a double take. If you listen on that episode, it was like, oh wait, I am the son of a CPA because my dad isn't practicing anymore. He has a software company. He should be a guest on here at some point.
Yeah.
But he was a CPA for most of my life, and so Sons of CPAs.
Yeah. So when I was typing up the description on our LinkedIn page for Sons of CPAs, I wrote like, we are all sons, and then in parentheses, daughters of CPAs. And then I realized, because you always say that at the beginning of the episode, but then I realized when people read it, they might think that we are all sons, like we all literally are sons and daughters of CPAs, but we're not. But we're trying to say
it's
that like
metaphor.
It's a metaphor.
Yeah.
Like when you say that, it's not that we all are literally, it's more of like we're all in this together.
And that concludes part 1 of our 2-part Nick's Tips on Podcasts. That's just hard to say. 2-part Nick's Tips on Podcasts. Part 1. So, thanks guys. Thanks for listening. Stay tuned for part 2. Probably going to come out in like a day or two. Peace.